Hello, my name is Quentin Smith. I'm a TV news reporter at WLBT News in Jackson. But before I started working in the state capitol, I was a student here at Mississippi State University. I majored in broadcast journalism and I got my degree in 2014. For me, being a TV journalist is something I've always wanted to do. I was fortunate enough to have a role model to look up to in this industry. I consider my dad my hero, and he was also a TV news reporter. So for me, I grew up going into the news station every day, following him out on stories, just learning at an early age what all comes with being a TV journalist. So for me, I knew at an early age that this is something that I definitely wanted to do. And honestly, I can say it's a dream come true to be following in my dad's footsteps, but to also be doing something that I truly love to do. And that's keeping my community informed on what's going on, telling people stories, giving a voice to the voiceless, and just shining a light on some of the things that need to be tackled here in our community. So for me, I literally go to work happy and smiling every day because I'm doing what I love. And I think my love for what I do shows in my work, because you can see I'm passionate about the stories I tell. I'm passionate about making sure that I shine a light on the injustices that's happening, while also bringing attention to what's going on in our everyday lives. One story that sticks out to me to this day that had a profound impact on me, I did a story, and this was during the pandemic while I was working at WLBT News in Jackson. It was this teenager from Madison County. He created hugging booths for a nursing home. And initially, when I first got this story idea, I was like, teenager donates hugging booths to a nursing home in Yazoo County. So initially I was like, why am I doing this story? But then I began to peel back the layers, and I realized that, like, hey, people at this nursing home, they have family members that they haven't seen or touched in almost a year. And so I knew instantly that was the angle that I wanted to take with this story, just to talk about how this gift that's being donated by this teenager is having a profound impact in many ways than we can imagine, because these family members haven't been able to see or touch their family members since the pandemic first started. So when I first got to the nursing home, there was a line of family members waiting to use the hugging booths to hug their family members, and just seeing the raw emotions shown from the people in the nursing home, as well as the family members being able to come and hug them, just seeing the emotions that came out between one of those people being able to just touch their family members and loved ones again, that had a big impact on me.
I hadn't hugged him in 6 weeks. And he's my baby.
I love you, honey.
I love you.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
That's Mama.
She's my baby.
And I'm her baby girl, so that's special. That means a whole lot.
One lady told me she hasn't seen or hugged her mom in 8 months. She's her mom's only child, and for them to be separated that long from each other was not normal. Both of them were kind of suffering in their own right. The mom was suffering because she was at the nursing home by herself. The daughter was suffering because she couldn't touch or get to her mom. But this gift that was donated by this teenager allowed them to reunite in a way. And this was around Christmas time as well. And so for them, they say they considered that to be an early Christmas present. But just seeing the emotion, just seeing the power that a simple touch has. And you can tell that the family members were grateful for that moment, but you can tell they were even more grateful for that teenager who donated these hugging booths. And for him, he said he got the idea because he saw how family members were struggling, those who have family members in nursing homes, how they were struggling without seeing their loved ones. And he's 16, 17 years old. That was just one nursing home he donated to. Once he saw that impact that it had there, he started creating more hugging booths and donating them to other nursing homes throughout central Mississippi. So just doing that story, it kind of reminded me of why I do this. Being able to be with people in some of their happiest moments, being able to be with people as they're showing love and affection for their family members. Then also just doing that story just to see how one teenager is doing everything he can to give back and help his community in a profound way. That's just an example of what we call a human interest story, a nice featurey story that'll put a smile on everybody's faces. But unfortunately, we can't tell stories like that all the time. Sometimes we have to do stories where we're uncovering some wrongdoings. We have to ask tough questions. And so in this industry, we have to know how to tell a variety of stories. We have to be versatile. And for example, just last year, the city of Jackson was going through a water crisis.
A lot of people live in the area, they don't have cars, they walk, take the bus places, they don't have access to get.
For months, some residents were without water or they had very low water pressure. And so a lot of them, what they were having to do is they were having to buy water bottles, and they were having to boil their water to take baths, or they'll have to use those water bottles to pour into their toilets just to be able to flush their toilets. Now, for some residents, as you can imagine, this was frustrating for them because a lot of them, they couldn't cook food in their homes, so they had to go out and get things to eat. For some who have kids, they had to stay in hotels for days and even weeks at a time. But then you had the Jackson mayor as well as the governor of Mississippi kind of going back and forth on who's responsible and how to fix this issue. I remember that was one question we asked. The governor was putting all the blame on city leaders, and city leaders were saying it's not their fault. They put the blame on the state because they said the state knew about the city's aging infrastructure, but over the course of the years, they never gave the city enough money to make the necessary repairs that needed to be made to fix the issue. And so while you got these two going back and forth, right there in the middle, you got the residents who are suffering from it all. They don't know about the history. All they know is when they cut their water on, it's either not coming on or there's very little low water pressure. But that was just one of the examples of how we got to ask the tough questions and how we have to do certain stories that aren't always feel-good stories. We got to get to the bottom of the issue. And with this issue, to me, the issue wasn't necessarily who's at fault, but more so how can we go about fixing this issue? How can we go about bringing in the funds to patch up the city's aging infrastructure and to make the necessary repairs so residents can get water back flowing through their homes? And doing those types of stories, you won't necessarily get the answers you need all in one day. You won't necessarily get the interviews that you need in one day. Those types of stories we usually call continuing coverage. The first day is usually us highlighting the issue. The second day is us realizing who's being impacted by the issue. And by the third day is when we're holding city leaders and state leaders accountable, trying to find out, hey, this is what's going on. It's impacting thousands of residents. How can we go about fixing this to where residents can have water? Because if you think about it, water, that's a basic necessity. You can't brush your teeth, you can't cook, can't shower. Your entire daily routine is messed up. And for residents having to deal with this issue for months, that wasn't right nor fair to them. And so as journalists, we saw that. And so we held city and state leaders accountable to help fix this issue. As a multimedia journalist, I have to be well balanced and know how to tell different types of stories, whether it's politics, hard news, crime stories. But my favorite of them all to tell are featurey stories. These are the types of stories where I feel like I can really put my all into it and I get to show my creativity. One example that comes to mind for Black History Month, I did a feature story looking at a group called the Tougaloo 9. And so back in the 60s, these 9 students from Tougaloo College, right, which is right there in Jackson, Mississippi, these 9 students wanted to integrate the public library. And so they staged what's called a read-in. So they just went into the library, picked out books, and began reading. Because from their point of view, they felt like They should be able to read at the public library just like everybody else. There should not be any discrimination or segregation. And so, and this was their way of protesting, just doing a read-in. And so as they were reading inside the library, within minutes, police came and arrested them because at that time, blacks were not allowed to read inside the public library. So all 9 students were arrested and taken to jail and charged with breach of the peace. So although they were in the library for only a few minutes, their actions, their protests had a lasting impact. Because if you think about it now, whenever you go inside a library, you're able to see people of all colors, races, and backgrounds. And here in Mississippi, what helped lead to that is the read-in by those 9 Tougaloo College students. So just being able to share their story and being able to take a look at the old footage from when they walked into the library and just to see how segregated the library was. So being able to tell their story is just one example of why I like telling feature stories and why I say they are my favorite. As a reporter, the day-to-day operations are often very long. People see us on TV and they think that's all we do, when in reality, that's just only a small sample of what we do. Like, for example, usually before I start each shift, the night before, I'm usually trying to find a story idea to tell for the next day. And I usually find my story ideas by really just reaching out to the people in the community just to see what's going on, because they are always the eyes and ears. They know what's going on before anybody else. And so I'm always reaching out to them just to see what's going on, what story needs to be told, what do I need to bring attention to. So the night before, I always gather my story ideas. Then when it's time to start the day, we always have what we call an editorial meeting. And that's where all the reporters and producers, we all bring story pitches and we pitch the story ideas that we want to work on for that day. The meeting usually lasts about 30 minutes. After we get our story pitch approved or get the story idea for the day, now it's time to head out the door and start working on your story. And so once I get the story idea, my first thing that I think about is, okay, who's being impacted by this, or who can be affected by this, or who can benefit from this. And so I immediately start making phone calls, start reaching out to people to interview and talk to for the story. And so once I get the interviews lined up, I go meet that person, interview, ask them my questions, get the sound bites that I need. And that's just one part. After the interview, now it's time to get what we call B-roll. And that's just video for the story. And so then I get the video I need to match the story. And then after that, I head back to the station, or in some cases, we have to work out in the field on the laptop. And so I begin editing my story. Picking out the sound bites that I want, the B-roll clips that I need. And then I'll start writing my story, writing the intro for the anchor, writing my intro for my live shot, and writing my package. After I write my story up, I write a rough draft, then we have to send it in to our producers or assignment editors for them to also proofread our script, because you always want to have 2 or 3 eyes look over it before the story hits air. And so once I get my script approved, now I'm voicing my package, laying down my voice track. And after I lay down my voice track, then I start editing, piecing everything together. I'm grabbing the sound bites I picked out, I'm grabbing the B-roll that I picked out, and I'm editing everything together. And then I'm sending everything in back into the newsroom. And then I start getting ready for a live shot.
We continue to follow that story we brought you as breaking news earlier this evening.
Yeah, a man wanted on misdemeanor charges in Warren County ends up in a standoff with law enforcement after crossing state line. 3 News Side's Quentin Smith has been following this story all throughout the day. He joins us with the latest information about the suspect's condition.
Yeah, that standoff happened along Highway 65 North here in Tupelo. Investigators tell me it lasted for more than 3 hours. At this time, there's still no word on the suspect's name, his condition, or exactly what led up to what happened moments before the shooting today. But what we do know is the suspect is accused of assaulting deputies in Mississippi before fleeing to Louisiana, where he got into that standoff with police. And so when police got to the scene, they were trying to, of course, calm and diffuse the situation. But unfortunately, this guy ended up trying to take his own life. He ended up shooting back at police, and police ultimately returned fire, ultimately shooting and killing him. But in that moment, the victim's family members were all out there on scene.
One person even being tackled to the ground by investigators. Troopers with the Louisiana State Police hover around the suspect before removing his body from the scene.
Emotions immediately filled the air. You had family members devastated, grieving, upset. And so in that moment, I decided not to let my writing or my words tell the story. I decided to let my video and the nat sound tell the story. You have family members who are crying, hugging, consoling one another. You have family members who are beating on cars, screaming, yelling. To me, that's the story. And that's one example of when I remove myself telling the story and just allow the elements, which is the video and the nat sound, to tell the story for me. I definitely consider myself a storyteller. Whenever I get an assignment or whenever I'm out on scene, I always try to find the story to tell whenever I'm being assigned something. Like I try to go beyond the who, what, when, where, and why, because each situation has a story. And for me, I use every tool that I have to tell my story, whether that's my camera to get video, whether that's nat sound to tell the story, whether it's the interviews from people that I'm talking to, and also my writing. All of those components come together to make a good story. In my opinion, storytelling is an enhanced version of communication. Because if you think about it, everybody has a story to tell. And so I feel like by understanding people, understanding the story they have, even just listening to the story they have, you know, it helps create unity. It helps people have a better understanding of one another, regardless of what the differences are. But just hearing their story, understanding their story, will help create unity and help bring everybody closer together as one.